Hello and welcome to Madokamagicasecrets, the podcast devoted to the Dark Magical Girl franchise, What the hell is it called? Puella Magi Madoka Magica. That's something like that. And it's spin-offs. Listen, we haven't recorded in a long time, and it took me like 5 seconds to remember what the hell the intro was. So whatever. I'm your host, Amanda, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Yasha and Vanna.
Hi.
Hey, ladies. They are the owners of the biggest revolutionary girl Utena website, Empty Movement. And I am a person from Florida. I'm a Florida woman. And on this podcast, we talk about Madoka Magica and all of its related side material, and we talk about what we love and don't love about the franchise. And today, we are doing a Rebellion positivity episode. We asked all of our listeners to send in why they love, or just what they love about the Rebellion movie, since we were specifically me, we were pretty hard on the Rebellion movie. And we also have a special guest today. Everyone give a big welcome to Lily. Hello, Lily.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Gosh, when did you email us? Like in October?
November, I think.
Yeah, like
October, November.
I think it was like in the fall, like way back.
Something like that.
She wanted to be on the show. I think it was even before we were like specifically thinking about doing this episode, like this Rebellion positivity episode. But Lily, you were already saying, "Oh, I really want to talk about Rebellion because I just love it so much," right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's my favorite piece of Madoka media.
Nice.
Yeah, so when we were thinking about doing this episode, it got to the point where I was like, well, this person has wanted to come on the show for forever. Why don't I just invite her to come and do it? And that's basically how we got here. So... Oh, before we do that, just a couple of updates. It is now already mid-April, which is crazy. We did come to a decision on what we're covering next. I think we decided we're doing different story manga instead of doing the rest of Magireko, right?
It finally got here.
Yeah. So just so everybody knows, we're doing that first, and then we're probably going to go back and do Magireko.
Yeah, because we were getting a little repetitive on Magireko, I think. We were getting kind of crabby.
Yeah, so we're going to take a little break from it, and then I think after we're done with Different Story, we'll be able to get back to Magireko with an open mind and a fresh perspective. And hi, Sam!
We also have the Magireko musical. Yes.
Oh, yeah!
Which we have.
Which I still really want to watch.
That sounds really fun.
I'll have to dig it up, but Nagumo did kind of like a play-by-play in one of the channels on our Discord while she watched it, so of just kind of what's going on, like not a translation, obviously, but...
Right.
So...
Yeah, that would be super awesome.
Yeah.
Anime musicals fascinate me. There's a Death Note musical, I think.
Oh my god.
There is. Have you seen the Utena ones?
I haven't been blessed with any anime musicals yet. I need to get into them.
Oh.
Have you seen Utena?
So well done.
No, we may well get into this, but Madoka was actually my first magical girl anime.
Oh wow.
Oh,
that's a way to start.
What a start.
Yeah. As we always say, you should watch it, so yeah, you should watch
Utena,
it.
that's one that I do need to watch. I've heard that Madoka references it a lot.
It really does.
So yes, little podcast update. I am still plugging away at artwork for my artist alley coming up, so...
What name do you use for your art, out of curiosity?
I use Lazdo. Well, it's technically Odd Lazdo, Oddlazdo, but because some jackass on Twitter already registered Lazdo and never used it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, it's one of those accounts that has like one tweet and they haven't logged in since like 2009 or something.
I'm interested because I do art too. I like doing art, but I discovered doing art classes that I don't like drawing what other people tell me to. So I gave up on doing it as a job. So it's really interesting that you're trying to sell this.
Yeah, that's me as a small undiagnosed ADHD child when I was in like 5th grade. And all I wanted to draw was Sailor Moon's face at 3/4 profile. Like that's all I wanted to draw.
Very specific.
And art teachers telling me, no, you have to draw like fruit and flowers, and I'm like, well, fuck that.
Yeah.
We gotta get back on track here. We gotta get back on track here, or we're never gonna finish recording this episode today. Anyway, Enough about me. We're not supposed to be talking about me in this episode. We're supposed to be talking about Lily and all the people who love Rebellion. Because
not you.
I have run my mouth enough about how much I don't like Rebellion. This episode's not supposed to be about me. It's supposed to be
Pro
about
Rebellion only.
Yeah.
We stand Rebellion in this episode.
Yes, this is a Rebellion positivity zone only. For the next, hour and a half or 2 hours or however long we're going to be sitting here.
However long it takes.
Yeah, however long it takes. So let us introduce Lily. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your history with Madoka Magica? You mentioned in your email that you used to run this Tumblr account. Why don't you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Lily. I run the madokamagicasecrets Tumblr blog. It is probably one of the only positive Tumblrs left. So you should all go join it and take a look at it. I started watching Madoka in 2016 or 2017 maybe, when I was deep into Evangelion, and my friend tells me, hey, there's this show that's like Evangelion, but it has anime girls in it, and it's really sad, and you should take a look at it. And so I was like, hell yes! And I watched the first 12 episodes, and I watched Rebellion while riding the bus home. And that was quite an experience watching that whole thing go down.
On a bus.
And I started the blog. I don't remember when exactly I started the blog, but I was like, hey, I get really deep into series. I got really deep into Evangelion, so I should, post all these crazy theories that I have somewhere. And then it just kind of kept getting bigger because I kept posting sort of interesting stuff. And now I don't really post many theories anymore. I just reblog fan art, but I want to get back into it.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, so is that like an open invitation for people who are still on Tumblr to run over there and send you your theories? Okay, everybody?
I like interaction a lot.
Go send Lily your theories.
I posted a few things today because I was rewatching Rebellion, and I think I put something along the lines of, I watched it for the first time in a year and a half, and it made me cry.
Aww. See, if you love Rebellion, the general you, not just you, Lily, but everyone listening, if you love Rebellion that much, it makes you cry, don't let my opinion ruin it for you. I'm just some asshole on a podcast. It doesn't matter that I don't like it.
I kind of
so
cried.
It needs to be a podcaster.
Yeah, today we're going to hear about why, people who love the movie in that way. So it's interesting that you say that you got deep into Evangelion, because I also got deep into Evangelion, right around the time that Madoka Magica aired, and I watched it for the first time. I don't remember if it was, I don't remember if it was before or after I watched it. I want to say that it was before, because I remember watching it when I was in law school, which is also when Madoka Magica aired. And I want to say that I watched Evangelion for the first time in law school, and then a few months later is when Madoka Magica came out, and then I watched that. I remember being very deep into Evangelion also, but I also remember getting to the end of it and feeling very frustrated with it in the same way I was very frustrated with Rebellion. So, and I've noticed that people who really like Evangelion really, really like the Rebellion movie.
Mm-hmm. As you might expect, I don't know if you've seen the Rebuild movies.
Yeah.
But as you might expect, since Rebellion's my favorite Madoka one, Rebuild 3 is my favorite Evangelion one. Although End of Evangelion is probably second best just because it was so mind-blowing.
As you might find strange, I really like all three of the Rebuild movies. I actually like them more than the original anime, which is heresy to some people. I understand. That's fine.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. But
I love it, but it can be weird.
But I really enjoy all the Rebuild movies. But the original anime is just something about it that does not work for me on some level, in the same way that the Rebellion movie kind of doesn't. And I just think it's interesting how people who get the Rebellion movie also seem to enjoy and really get the Eva anime.
I think it's because they're both about depression.
And they're in edginess and
weird, edgy. You have to find out half the lore by finding old interviews that he did and stuff like that. Rebellion. I was just, once again, I was posting about it today, and I was looking at all the runes and stuff in the movie because those runes, they tell you everything, but no one was supposed to find out what they were.
Right.
And I was looking at it and I was like, man, this really is kind of just like Evangelion. You gotta like find this this old information, and it's like, oh, this is actually why everything makes sense, and then suddenly it all clicks and you're like, how am I supposed to figure that out just by watching the show? I do have to say, I love rewatching and analyzing things, and like I love going for those lore searches, but I can totally get, and you said this kind of thing in the Rebellion episodes too, for sure. It was just like, you can't get it if you just watch it on TV, or if you just watch it in the theater. God forbid, Rebellion in the theater, you would walk out not knowing what the heck happened.
Yeah. And, you know, that comes down to personal preference, I think. And what somebody has patience for. Yeah, because like you said, you like digging into movies in that way, and I do like elements of that in movies, but I like it when there's still something entertaining. I'm still being entertained at the same time. Like we've talked about this before with Utena. Utena is kind of like very similar to what we're talking about with Eva and Rebellion, but I can watch Utena and there's still like a cohesive narrative being told that I can follow.
Yeah, like the upfront plot line is all there.
Yeah, there's still something there. Even though I do sometimes say to myself, I don't quite understand what's going on right now, there's like this emotional through line that you can follow through the entirety of Utena that is easy to follow, you know? And for some reason, Utena kind of rides that line in a really perfect kind of way that seems to satisfy everybody. At least in my opinion. It satisfies me as somebody who tends to not like Eva and Rebellion type of things. So, I don't know.
But Utena also satisfies the deep lore dives. I mean,
you can really
do
dive
the deep
into
lore
that
if you want to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bono and
You
I
guys can
spent
attest to that.
20 years doing that. I've done a little bit of a deep dive sometimes. Little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Once or twice.
I don't want to harp on Ava too much because we're talking about Rebellion, obviously, but I just want to say that the only way to understand Evangelion and its actual continuous plot line is if you read an interview where he explains that Adam is Kworu, like the thing that caused Second Impact is what created Kworu out of Adam, and so that's how he can transcend time and all this stuff, and how he like knows everything in Rebuild 1 and 2, but not in 3 because it's new. Yeah. And I was like, well, how the heck was I supposed to know that?
You were.
Exactly. It's never mentioned anywhere except for like one. It's like in an interview or it's in like a light novel or something. It's like mentioned in one super obscure thing.
Yeah, much like Rebellion though, he's fueled by just how gay he is for the main character.
Valid.
He transcends time for the gay.
The gay can overcome anything.
It's true. It's very true.
I think that's what a Madoka Magica comes down to. All my theories are gone. It's just, that's what it is.
It's just a big
Homer's gay transcends time and space.
Yeah. Yes.
Yep.
It's the power of her gay. Did you have any other specific thoughts you wanted to share about our Rebellion episodes, or specific thoughts about the Rebellion movie that you wanted to share with us?
Well, in regards to the episodes, I thought it was really interesting. I took a couple. I just took like a couple little notes about some of the things I thought
like, this
struck me.
Just as an aside, this is where, if I had shared this with you earlier, you could have added some of your own notes, like what I'm highlighting right here.
Yeah.
So before we even get to the rest of this, if you want to just go nuts, like just talk, whatever you want to say right now, go for it.
I was curious if you've read Wraith Arc.
I have not. I know what happens in it. I have read the wiki. I know what happens. That's a situation. I don't want to spoil it for our other lovely hosts or any of our listeners who have not read it. I would love to cover it on the podcast. I will say there's a lot of stuff that happens in that manga that should have been in the movie.
Yeah, I was curious because you talked about how the Wraiths were kind of like bland looking enemies, and I was like, there's a whole manga about how
Yeah.
they try to make them more interesting.
Yeah.
And then it makes me wonder why they restricted that to like a spin-off that's kind of optional, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I don't
I'm pretty
know.
sure the last one is like this polygonal crystal mass that freezes anything it touches and stuff.
I don't know if I remember that from the summary, but
It's weird.
I'll believe you.
Nagisa talks about it. There's a little guide that Nagisa has. There's like a whole page on it where she just talks about them. And I think it said that Nagisa has never run into them, but she would probably super hate it.
Aww.
I love Nagisa. I do like Bebe more, but I love Nagisa. She's so cute.
I think her design is super cute, and I would like to see more of her. We don't really get to see enough of her in Rebellion.
Yeah, we don't really get to know who she is at all.
No.
Just cheese.
Yeah.
Just cheese.
Well, to be fair, if you know Charlotte's storyline, you know a little bit about her, but then they changed it in Magireko anyway.
Oh no, did they?
No.
Yeah, from...
What the
well,
hell?
Okay, we can cut this out
Mad at Magireko.
if no one wants to be ruined for it, but I'm
Okay.
pretty sure
No, you can ruin
someone
me.
told... Yeah, I'm pretty sure someone told me that they made it so like some magical girl assassin killed her mother, and then it kind of ruined the plot line of
That is
the idea that she
bullshit.
wanted cheesecake. Yeah, thankfully Magireko is its own timeline, so we don't have to worry about that.
Okay.
Welcome to the Rebellion
That-
Positivity episode where we should have Magireko. Oh. And this is why we're saving
Yeah.
Magireko until the
Yeah.
whole thing is out.
Mhm. I have some salt with Magireko. I would be happy to complain about
Me
the design
too.
choices and stuff
I do.
in a different episode. We don't have infinite time here, but I have some problems.
Yeah.
Either way, though.
Yeah.
Let's see.
I'm sure we'll be doing a listener feedback episode at some point about Magireko.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Something else I was wondering about is if you knew about like the mechanics with wishes, because something that isn't entirely clear in the main series is that when a magical girl makes a wish, it like literally defines not only like their power but also sort of their set direction. And I was curious if you kind of knew about how.
Well,
How,
I mean, some of our
important that
listeners might
was.
not, so let's get into it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, what do you mean by set direction?
Well, I have a personal theory. I don't know how true it is, but I have a personal theory that by making a wish, they're sort of locking themselves into like a destined path almost. And I don't know how true that is, if it might be self-fulfilling prophecy or just like their personality. It all kind of blends together to an extent. But for instance, Kyoko, her original wish gave her mind influence powers. She could like mentally manipulate people. And then when her dad committed the double homicide and arson, she abandoned her wish and lost the ability to use it, which is why she only has the spear.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I believe Other Story talks about that more because it's sort of about Mami and Kyoko being
Right.
pals.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so one of the things I thought was sort of relevant because, you know, by losing Madoka, I think that part of Rebellion is that Hamura is scared of losing sort of like her purpose by losing her wish, you know?
That makes
Mm.
sense.
And I don't really know exactly what that affects. I think her only real power is, beyond just kind of having guns and stuff, is the time reversal.
Yeah.
Right.
I just thought that was interesting.
That is a good point, because that comes back to some Wraith arc stuff. Well, and this isn't a spoiler because it is in Rebellion. It gets mentioned so briefly in Rebellion that it's something that people might only catch on rewatches, about how in Rebellion, her power is being able to rewrite people's memories. It's not time travel anymore. Do you remember this?
I did not. That's fascinating.
Well, in the Wraith arc, that's her power.
Really? Do you
Do you-
think that's
do you remember
because
this in
of the
Wraith
new
arc?
timeline?
I don't think she has time powers anymore in Wraith arc. I think she has memory
could
rewriting
be.
powers.
That is really interesting. I gotta read Wraith arc properly at some point. Anytime I try to read it, they're missing volume 1.
I mean, if I recall correctly, I don't know, but like that's a thing where it's like, okay, could you let us know that at the very flippin' beginning of this movie, please? That her powers are different now?
That explains a lot about Rebellion
Yeah.
too. Actually.
The distinction between
Wow,
those two
that-
things is very like.
And
what
here
is
I
the
thought
distinction?
the incubators were just really smart and could just like bend people's memories. It's like, nah, Tamara.
Yeah, and like that's like a major plot point, if I remember correctly, in Wraith arc, is that she's not. That's part of why she's doubting her own memories, is that she's like, well, if I can manipulate other people's memories, who is to say that I'm not making up Madoka in my head?
That's fascinating. Wow.
Well,
I gotta
and
revise a
and
lot of
doesn't
stuff.
isn't that such a much better developed idea of Homura starting to like lose her way? And
I think there were talks about turning Rebellion into a season 2, which might work better, but they haven't really done anything other than Magi Recco, so I don't know how likely that is. That is really interesting. That changes everything.
I know what could have been. It just makes me kind of salty. Anyway,
again,
positivity. Positivity.
Yeah. Then again, though, Shaft is known for their technique of creating a show with really like relatively simple to understand lore and everything, and then they just don't have time to put it in, so they create like a bajillion spin-offs to explain everything.
Yeah.
Like the PSP game. The PSP game, I'm salty about the PSP game. The PSP game is so obscure now. And it contains, like, everything that you need to know. It has so much rich lore. It talks about why Mommy's wish is the way she is. It, like, gives Madoka, like, autistic-coded behavior and stuff. It gives me enough fuel to think that Homura might be trans. Mm-hmm. It, like, has so much stuff in there. And it's like, no one knows about this game anymore.
Wasn't there a translation project for that game?
Maybe.
Online
I don't know
somewhere?
too much about it. Yeah, I said, it's obscure. I don't know too much.
From what I remember, I think there was one, and they got like 80% finished, and then I think it like disappeared off of Facebook.
Oh, that's
Oh,
awesome.
no.
So it's probably, the files are probably still out there somewhere. If anybody listening to this can get us that ROM,
Please.
Dude, absolutely.
Please send us an
God.
email. I do own a PSP legally.
I need one.
I legally own a PSP, so I'm not a thief.
Lead hacker. I am.
Lead hacker.
Also, as an attorney, I can say that every statement made on this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. It is not to be taken seriously. But for real, send us an email. Give us the ROM, please.
Yes.
Dude, I would put that on an actual PSP card so fast and like buy a PSP. You have no idea.
Yeah,
That's so interesting.
I would love to play that game. We could stream that game. That would be really fun.
Oh yeah, that would be
awesome.
That would be great.
Oh my god, hold on. This is hilarious. I have to tell you guys this. I just remembered this.
Okay.
While I was gathering our positivity messages for this episode, I went onto the Curious Cat, which I actually have not gone on in months. And we have a lot of really awesome messages on there that we have to get through at some point that are not Rebellion positivity related. But there was one great message on there from probably December or January. It was just one sentence from Anonymous, and it said, "Stop complaining about the Magi Recco outfits."
Never. I'll never stop.
And I just want that person to know that I propose we create a new tier on our Patreon called the Buy Our Silence tier. It'll be the $1,000 mark.
We will shut up about this.
You can sign up for the Buy Our Silence tier, and if you give us $1,000 a month, we will never complain about the outfits on Magi Recco
as long as
again.
you're paying.
Okay.
Yeah. So let us know if you're interested in that, Anonymous, and we'll give you that opportunity to buy our silence. Anyway,
I do feel the need to say one thing on Magi Recco's outfits. They are not all fan servicey.
No,
they're not.
Not all of them.
They're not all. Yeah.
The ones that are not are generally very cluttered. They don't feel like they have a theme. That's one of my problems with it, because like I've done legit like analysis on all the outfits of the main 5 girls. They all make a lot of sense, and they all like unify. They all work together really well. And like a lot of these other ones feel like they just kind of threw stuff on to make it look cooler. Yeah, that's my problem.
Yeah, part of the problem I think is just that they're all designed by different people.
Holy Mommy looks awesome though.
Yes.
Holy Mommy and Holy Alina, they look incredible.
Yes, they are both really cool. But I mean, part of it is just that you have different design sensibilities.
It seems like they didn't have like an overarching set of guidelines that they gave to the artists, and they rather just kind of went, make a magical girl.
Do something cool.
She's got to be cute.
Yeah, Ume Aoki's designs are so crisp and like very simplistic, but very like she doesn't over ornament or whatever it is that I'm fucking trying to say. You know what I'm saying? Like she doesn't. She works with simple shapes and really good coordinating colors.
Nice
and
silhouettes. I love the silhouettes.
Really good silhouettes. She doesn't do really crazy hairstyles, excessively long bows, excessively long capes. She doesn't really do that kind of stuff. But other artists will do that, you know?
Yeah.
And so when you have this gacha where you need to design hundreds of girls and you invite these guest artists, like you're going to have other people designing these other magical girls and they're going to do like crazy anime shit, you know?
Yeah.
So I think...
Yeah.
Variety becomes the priority more than cohesiveness.
Yeah,
making a
exactly.
Gacha game,
Variety starts to become more of a thing than like having a well-balanced group of main characters, you know? Yeah. So, and you're gonna have some horny artists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is anime.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. What's the name of the girl with the dark blue hair and like the dress? I always forget her name.
Yachio?
The one that's like, she looks like
Yachio,
Hamura, kind of.
Yachio?
Yachio, yeah. I love that she has a not very fan servicey outfit, but in all the art, they like really accentuate the shading between her legs.
Yes.
Oh, great.
They couldn't escape.
They really like that long slit up her leg
Yes, they do.
Yeah,
in
and
the dress.
her belly button shows too. Like, which
Oh
is
yeah,
kind of weird,
that
because once again
she
has
has so much static electricity. Her dress just clings
Just
to her
clings.
body
Yeah,
like
That's
saran
her
wrap.
that's her issue. Yeah,
My
just got back
favorite.
from arts and crafts.
At
She can't
least
help
she's
it.
of age.
Yes.
Womp womp.
I mean, she still has gigantic baby eyes, and her face
mean,
looks
it's
like all the
anime,
14-year-olds' faces.
They do have those
but still.
Madoka eyes, those like Madoka magic
But
eyes.
it says she's in college.
She is in college, yeah.
It's anime.
Thank
we
God.
gotta forgive
All
the
right.
gigantic eyes.
Okay, you're
It's true.
you get a pass for this one, Shaft. Okay, you get a pass for that one. I have complaints about every other girl
But
though.
you get a pass for this one.
All right, but we're getting
Okay.
a little off topic here.
yes. I was about to say we need to talk about the movie at some
Let's
point.
talk about
We
Rebellion.
got to, please God. So, another thing that I wanted to, I was curious about this. You did talk about the Nutcracker imagery briefly in it.
Yeah.
I was curious about kind of what you thought the Nutcracker imagery was going for, because you did kind of briefly discuss it.
So we have a great Twitter follower and frequent commenter, Tomte Fairytale Blog, who we need to get on the show because they have, I don't know if they are a English major of some kind or a historian or a librarian or what the deal is, but
they know their fairy
they know their fairy
Holy
tales.
shit.
Yeah,
no,
like
I-
like they leave some amazing comments with this fairy tale trivia and fairy tale lore, and they are the ones who first brought up the Nutcracker connections here. I am not familiar with the Nutcracker story at all. I know that it's the guy comes to the girl's Christmas party and the Nutcracker breaks and she puts the thing around his face and then it comes alive at night and then he fights a big rat.
Yeah.
A white rat.
That's
A big-
about where
yeah.
I'm at.
Interesting, a white rat.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
A white rat.
a cubit.
Yeah, what I usually connect it to is a loss of purpose, because a Nutcracker that can't crack nuts has lost its purpose, which is kind of like what Hamura is dealing with.
Yes.
Which is that she doesn't have a Madoka to protect, which is kind of why she does what she does at the end. She, tries to build a simulation to protect her. But yeah, I was wondering, because I thought you brought up something else. I can't really remember anymore, but I thought you had something else about it too. I like getting, all the different ways they could have applied it, because they overlap so much, when they use that.
It's interesting you mentioned like the whole Nutcracker like losing their jaw, having nothing to crack, when that's kind of a facet of Homo Lily. Like the top of her head kind of falls off right at the beginning.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like you've lost that. She's like a broken Nutcracker at that point, kind of.
Nice.
Oh, and I'm sure you brought it
imagery.
up because I forget which one of you knows a lot about flowers.
Oh my god.
But
That
I
might
know
be
there was
me.
some flower
That's
discussion.
probably her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know there was some flower discussion about the crimson spider lilies
Mhm.
must have shown up at some point there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that they were growing out of her skull, because that means that the toxic bulb is in her brain. The spider lilies are a bulb plant. They all come out of a bulb. And I thought that was interesting. It may be just because it was arranged as a bouquet on her head, but I thought if they were reaching out of a bulb, then the toxicity is in her brain.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I'm not sure if they intended for that, but I thought that was really neat.
I mean, they probably did.
That probably.
They're my favorite
was
flower
intended.
now, crimson spider lilies, because of Rebellion. I want to get a whole field of them at some point.
Look metal.
Hard to manage, though. They're supposed to be really hard to grow.
Yeah.
Oh, the dance sequence. Yeah, the transformation sequence. I did so much digging into the transformation sequence.
Ooh,
I
do
figured
tell.
it out. I decoded it.
Oh,
I got it now.
We got so many comments, just stray comments about the dance sequence, actually, too. Like, people just had a lot of observations about just all of the visuals in that.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because, I will talk about it, but as an overarching theme, I noticed that you generally were of the opinion that there was some fan servicey kind of stuff in there, and I'm not sure if you fully concluded that it was something where they were trying to like build up expectations and destroy them, or if they were trying to like sort of please the fans in some way. But the transformation sequence was something where I got a lot of, we're creating something and it's not what it seems and we know it's not what it seems, and it's kind of just like playing off of them almost. Yeah, I don't know how much do you think, what is the proportion of like trying to build something up and destroy it in typical Madoka fashion, and how much is just like straight up fan service, do you think?
Shivani, you guys want to answer this first?
Sure. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, watching the dance sequence was like, okay, we have to have a transformation sequence because fans will expect that. That's what people want. But I do believe
can't see it, but
that
I'm
they
nodding.
were definitely trying to make points with it. Like, they were trying to, because it's very, there's a unification of purpose in the way that they display the girls and the way that they portray them, the kind of imagery that they use around them. It's all very specific to the girl, and I thought that there was more to dig into there, but it's kind of like surface level fan service, and then underneath saying something quite a bit more. Vana, what did you think?
Definitely.
The whole transformation sequence to me felt very fan servicey in the sense of that it's very happy and low stakes and eager and like, yay, here's our magical girls, whoop whoop whoop, and it's but that kind of falls in with the whole rest of what they're building up there, and that they're trying to make you feel kind of uncomfortably safe in this. Like, everything just seems too healthy and too perfect.
Uncomfortably safe is a good way to put that.
Like, the magical girls are transforming, but it doesn't seem like they're transforming to fight an enemy. It's almost just like, yay, check this shit out, it's cool. Like, there's not a, oh shit, we have to actually battle something that might conceivably kill us. It's very celebratory of each of the characters, and in that sense that the transformations are very particular to each character and celebrates them and blah 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 and all that kind of very eager sort of way. But it's uncomfortable because you're like, this is the beginning of a movie and this feels a little too happy to be sustainable, and it's got like that kind of energy around it, but that whole first half of the movie has that energy around it, so it feels just emblematic of the rest of the pattern that they were trying to set up to that point, where it's like, this feels like I said, uncomfortably safe.
Amanda, what was your take on it?
Aside from like the things I've already definitely said in the Rebellion episodes that were more like ranty.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, maybe don't get into the rant, but
yeah, I mean, like, I generally agree with, I do agree that this is, I mean, it kind of goes back to like, okay, what was the anticipated audience member watching this?
Who's here?
As you guys remember, when Panda was on the show talking about this, she loved this part, right? Yeah. She was all on board. She loved it. So if you're a fan like Panda, then maybe Panda could. I don't want to put words in Panda's mouth, but
I mean, Panda can feel free to edit her thoughts in here.
Huh? I mean, I guess we could ask her. Is she online?
I don't think she's online right now. But
yeah, she's not. I don't know if she is.
I just think they're neat.
But I mean, she really loved that stuff.
Mhm.
Maybe she kind of felt a twinge of this doesn't feel right at the same time she was enjoying it. I don't know. But you
Mhm.
have those folks. Then you had the folks like me who were like, I can tell that this is, like, I already know that this isn't correct. So can you just get to the point already? Which is, as I've mentioned, like kind of how I felt about the entire first half of the movie.
I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that. I was curious because, earlier in, there was sort of this impression that you were talking as if they thought they could actually fool someone into believing some of this stuff was actually good, but then later on it kind of shifted into more like,
Well, yeah.
I think they're trying to build up an expectation and everyone, wink wink, they know, actually.
I don't know, because another thing was that, as someone who was there and in the wait for this movie, we saw in the trailers, like, shit that was clearly not possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Considering the ending of the anime. So there were people who were like, is this an AU movie?
Right.
Like, how is this possible? So it's like maybe they were trying to fool some people into thinking like, hey, enjoy this fun alternate universe movie. Like, I'm really not sure. But there's also all that stuff at the beginning of the movie, like the opening where they're on the carousel and she's like standing completely still and they're dancing around her.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. That was an acid trip.
Yeah, so like, I don't know, like I don't know what they were trying to do with that, honestly. I'm probably not the best person to ask this question because I don't get the movie in general, apparently, the way it was meant to be understood.
I get that. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering
I generally interpret that whole thing as fan service just because it is a large chunk of a movie dedicated to something that does not move the plot forward.
What did you think of it then?
Yeah.
I liked it, but that's because you'll discover over time when I talk about what I like about this film, I really appreciate when they go super hard on the visuals and just make something that's really weird to watch.
I'll say this.
Yeah.
It would be a great scene in an episode of a season of season 2.
It does. It can feel sometimes like they were. It's the same kind of thing with the
yeah.
movies, I think, where they tried to pack in like 8 episodes into one. It feels like they were trying to do that to an extent. Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah.
The second half was
It's interesting
phenomenal,
that a lot
though.
of the people that criticize Rebellion the most are the ones that were like, this should have been a whole season. Like,
No,
you
really,
wanted more Rebellion, actually.
I actually did. That's actually
Sound demons
accurate.
ever.
I wanted it to be longer.
I wanted
It needed
more
to be
Rebellion.
longer.
That's true. Like it. Then again, I love the movie budget
Really?
on that. They really put in. They put in the time to make that second half look just incredible. Everything like from the point where the bus catches on fire up until like the end was just like this wild fever dream. I love that. I love the second half so much. I do have to agree though that although I do still kind of like the first half, the second half is definitely like far superior than the first one.
Yeah.
Oh, the second half is brilliant.
That it was amazing. That's the part specifically that I got emotional at. I was watching the entire sequence to when she like figures out the truth all the way up until like the massive witch fight with Mysterioso playing, which fun fact is the only song you can't find that they have ever used. It doesn't exist on the internet ever. I managed to nab an MP3 though before they deleted it. But I have the Rebellion Special Edition DVD that comes with a soundtrack CD, and it doesn't have Mysterioso on it.
That's awful. That's a crime.
I paid money for this, Shaft. You can't sell... Look, I know you love your merch. I know you love your merch, okay? I'm a sucker for the merch. I have the earring. I have the Nightmare plush replica. I have this stuff. But if you want to make money off the song, you have to make it available, please. I will buy it. I will buy Mysterioso.
Just
okay?
a single.
Please.
Just that.
Did I mention that before? I have like $1,500 worth of Madoka merch that I managed to nab on like good deals.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh.
I have the Light Up Soul Gem set. I have like a set of Grief Seeds. I have like one of 30 Nightmare plush that they made. I have Hamura's ear cuff.
That's awesome.
I have this little Dao thing where it's like Madakami and Hamusifer like on opposite sides.
is that the thing that lays flat?
Yeah, I think that's
and they have some for like regular ones. They have like a Madoka.
Yeah, I have the one
Homura
I have the one for Madoka and Glasses Homura in their schoolgirl outfits.
Oh, that's cute. Moemura.
Yes, it's super cute.
I call her Moemura.
Magireko has got me calling her Glasses Homura. Okay, we should probably get to some our listener comments then.
Yeah, I haven't even talked about like the stuff I like too much. We've really been disorganized here.
That's what happens.
I was just going to talk about the dance sequence. I didn't even get to deconstruct it. We got talking about merch and stuff.
So yes, please tell us your thoughts on these transformations.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously there is an order. They have Mami, Kyoko, Sayaka, Homura, and then Madoka at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So Mami, as you may recall, she sort of does this ballet move where she's shaped like a soul gem exploding, and then she explodes out of it, surrounded by flowers. I'm not sure if the flowers are of any specific kind. They might just be kind of decorative.
Yeah, Mami seems to be, in the series at least, surrounded by almost like the kind of flowers that kids would draw.
Yeah.
Like daisies, kind of.
Yeah.
Like very basic flowers, kind of.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when she's doing this, I'm thinking that it's about a connection to life, because that's what her power is based on. She wished to be saved from a car crash, and so she has her hair ribbons because they're supposed to be connecting her to life. So that's just a little something about her. And also, if she's exploding out of a soul gem, it might be something about how she's sort of revealing her true self, where she's trying to manipulate girls by acting friendly rather than like actually being as well composed and nice as she seems on the surface. Kyoko has that mini arm dance thing that looks really wild and a lot of like fire and stuff. Obviously, fire is important. We all know about that one. But the dance thing could be a nod toward a Hindu goddess who fought against demons, which is, interesting. Sayaka has the breakdancing, of course, which I added the note, fuck yeah, onto. And she charges into herself is because she was impulsive and she charged right into being a magical girl.
Yeah.
And also the breakdancing could be a nod toward liking Kyoko instead of Kyosuke, because it's more sort of like breakdancing stuff than classical, because Kyoko's always on that dance machine. And then Homura stumbles on hers because she's really shy in this one. She jumps through film frames, which is about her jumping through time. And then she tears out of the darkness, which could be either like trying to escape from the dream, or like trying to escape from her dark self, perhaps. And then there's the bow, which could be a nod toward her worshipping that statue of Madoka later in the movie. And then Madoka, she has that grid of 9 with a bunch of her. There's her silhouette crossing not through the frames, but over them, because she's omnipotent and she exists above time, and also potentially above sort of Homura's ability to interact with her. The grid specifically probably stands for omnipresence, or the number of times that Homura has seen her throughout the time loops. And she also has the pointing around, which might be her selectively liberating magical girls using her powers. And she also is looking through her hands, potentially looking into the incubation field, because she sent her 2 agents, Sayaka and Nagisa, in. And she also stands in front of a rainbow, which was also in the background when they were fighting Homolili. And it could also be a Brocken Spectre. Do you know what a Brocken Spectre is, out of curiosity? A Brocken Spectre is a sort of light effect where if you stand in front of a shadow, it creates like this weird circular rainbow thing around your body. And it is something that is associated with Walpurgisnacht. It's also associated with Kriemhild Gretchen, because Kriemhild Gretchen is actually the massive shadow of a smaller object, which once again you would only know from the PSP game or from playing Magic Reco. I just want to thank Shaft for that. So, in terms of this stuff, I thought it was interesting. There are several magical girls that have themes of witches in them, or witch hunting, and they're only the girls that are part of Homura's subconscious, and not the ones that were sent from the outside. Sayaka is the only one without any potential witch imagery. So it's interesting to me that all the ones that seem to be sort of manipulated by the incubation field, or the ones that were literally generated by Hamura's memory, like her version of Madoka. They're the ones that are trying to tell her that she's in a dream. And also there are some runes on Hamura's side, which read, "To mistress we are bored, I kill myself, and they glorify death," which seem pretty self-explanatory after finishing the movie. So yeah, just some early foreshadowing if anyone managed to snap a picture of the frame and afterwards like scrawl the translations onto them.
Okay, imagine if you were like a Madoka mega fan who like taught yourself how to read runes like before this movie came
I can
out,
write
and then
in
like
them,
you
but
go
only if
to
I
you like
have a
go to
grid.
this movie and it's like spoiling you throughout the whole movie because you're like the only person in the theater who can read these runes. Because like
Honestly, that would be
It's
great.
interesting.
I know, I feel
love
like I
that.
had some
I
huge...
love
well,
being
you
Jennifer
probably
Aniston.
feel like such a badass.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't care. You probably feel like the coolest fan in the room.
Yeah, if you're that hardcore, then you probably think it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually commented on this once again on my blog after rewatching Rebellion, but in the little intro sequence where there are all the bubbles floating up, there's runes and everything, and they are literally drawing like Madoka outside of the window and stuff like that, and I was like, dude, come on. And also, all the Clara dolls look at a crudely drawn depiction of the entire film at one point.
Nice.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff. This is the kind of thing that you can only see if you're like me and you got a flash drive of it on like a shady website and you can go in frame by frame and like look at all this stuff.
One of the comments that we got just about the movie in general is that when Madoka is looking through her fingers, like as a triangle, they compared that to like the Eye of God at the top of the pyramid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's also very possible. So for what they're aiming for.
Like the all-seeing eye.
Yeah, because that's kind of what she is now. She can see all the magical girls. So in regards to stuff that I really liked about the movie, I think we've already kind of talked enough about
Let's
the
hear
visuals.
what else before we get into the listener emails here.
We talked about the visuals already, especially in the second half. They really took full advantage of the fact that this was in some kind of weird labyrinth, and they just did whatever the hell they wanted.
That really
Pretty
is
much.
the movie's
There's-
probably the movie's like biggest strength. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I mentioned before, I like Evangelion. I like watching weird acid trips and stuff like that. That's really my jam when I was watching that movie.
You need to watch Utena.
Yeah, you've got to watch Utena.
You need to. But don't watch the movie.
Yeah,
Well, maybe do. Maybe you'd be like me and watching the movie first would be good for you.
3.0 and End of Evangelion especially are just nuts.
I could definitely see then why the second half of Madoka especially appealed to you.
Yeah. Also, I like that they mishmatched so many animation styles into it, because when you watch the original series, they obviously have a lot of different things in there. They've animated Walpurgis Nacht in the anime style, but they also have CG for her gear, and they drew, like, Charlotte in a more cartoony style. They had some of that stuff where they just have a static image and they move it around, but it feels like at a certain point they ran out of ideas other than we'll draw this and we'll kind of move it around. And then Rebellion comes in, first thing they've sort of claymated a plush. And if you look at its reflections in the window reflections are actually drawn in 2D.
Nice.
Which is really interesting. Yep. They have paint on glass. They have the same kind of static image stuff going on, but they brought in the CGI. They have all kinds of wild imagery in there. Like you can tell they put in like all the budget that they possibly could into that whole sequence.
Yeah.
Also, I know that this is obviously something that appeals to you guys less, but as someone who's really hardcore into it, I love going through and like deconstructing all the little hints that they left in. And I totally get that if you were to watch this in theaters, you wouldn't have any clue what the heck's going on with any of that.
It definitely benefits from rewatches. You catch so much more the second time around, even the third time around. To be honest, I think you and I are kind of on the same wavelength here, Lily. I just haven't dug into it because I saved my energy for Utena.
No, there's definitely a lot to feed on, and like there's a happy medium between being like coherent without that sort of thing and having it kind of uplift, and I think a lot of the negativity sometimes surrounds where that balance is, but Like, I don't really feel like it was hard to follow or that I came to a different conclusion without all of that context. It's just that once you know it, you're like, oh, you assholes.
Yeah.
You know, then you're like, okay, fine. You know, I just got massively trolled for 2 hours, and you're like, that's fair, I guess. That's what I signed up for.
Yeah.
But then again, that is what I signed up
Yeah,
for. If you didn't know that's what you were signing up for, maybe that would be harder, but...
Yeah, definitely. I think the main question that I would have about making something like that, though, is I would wonder how would be the best way to release something like that so that people can actually like go through it and figure it out. Because, you know, obviously in a theater, that seems like kind of a bad idea because you get like the full experience of the visuals and everything. You know, you really get a lot out of it. But then at the same time, if you want to rewatch it, or, you know, skim through it and, like, really scrutinize it, you know, it's kind of impossible.
Well, I think the idea behind it was to kind of, like, blow people away with the visuals and the music and all of that. And then once it's available on DVD or for download or on Blu-ray or whatever, then
you could freeze frame and
hope
chew on it.
Being blown away by the music and the visuals, because we haven't mentioned the music enough. Holy shit, I love the soundtrack.
Yes.
Oh, the music's so good.
So
oh
good.
my god, it's so good.
But
I would say that the best way to tell a story in the way that would satisfy you guys is to write it in a way that would piss people like me off. Write it in a way that is because I'm the kind of person, like, I do appreciate stories that have nuance to them. Like, I'm not some kind of like I'm not somebody who's like, you know,
we know you're not just there for the surface read.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of an example because I don't want to be compared to the kind of moviegoer I'm thinking of right now. Let me think. What's like a really bad take on a movie? Like a painfully common bad take on a
why
movie.
didn't the Eagles take Frodo to Mordor themselves at the beginning of the movie?
Sort of. Okay, have you guys seen 500? Have you guys seen 500 Days of Summer?
500
No.
Days
I haven't
of
seen it.
Summer.
Okay, never mind. What's another good movie?
Amanda, this is reminding me of something.
Yes.
Did you ever see that video of Paris Hilton making a cooking video about making lasagna?
No.
That's the kind of moviegoer you're talking about. She forgets to put garlic and onions in the lasagna.
Oh my god.
Yeah. That's the kind of moviegoer you're talking about.
Oh, okay, here's an example. This is something that a very dear friend of mine said to me about My Neighbor Totoro. She is a very dear friend of mine, and I love her dearly. But she does not understand Eastern media. She is very much someone who prefers Western media. And I find that Eastern media tends to do a lot more of the figure it out yourself kind of stuff. And the people in the West who do those kind of movies tend to be very, very well known for it, and just because it's so unusual in the West. Who's the guy who did Twin Peaks?
David Lynch.
Yeah, like a lot of that kind of stuff. It's just a little bit more like cerebral. Like you just don't kind of get that kind of stuff in the West in the same way that you kind of do in anime.
Yeah.
At least in my experience. Anyway, she watched My Neighbor Totoro, and I asked her how she liked it, and she said, well, I really enjoyed it all the way up to the end, and then it just kind of ended, and you never find out what the Totoros are. Right? And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
You didn't understand the movie at all.
It's about
It is
cats.
interesting.
What
Eastern
the
culture is a
Totoros
lot more
are,
about
that's
nature.
not the point of the movie.
Yeah.
It's about
Yeah.
little kids living in the woods, and they're having fun with forest spirits, and you see through their eyes. And, you know, the little girl wants to bring the corn to their mom, and it doesn't matter that she has no idea how to get to the hospital because she's 4. And she just wants to bring the corn to her sick mom at the hospital. You know what I mean? It doesn't fucking matter what the Totoros are. But, you know, she's looking at it as somebody who was expecting there to be some kind of explanation at the end.
Right.
Yeah. Like, so that's kind of a little bit how I was looking at Rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've said this before, so just to make my point, I think that's why more of what I was expecting from Rebellion, just because the anime series is like that.
Mm-hmm.
So if
far
if
direct.
you want to write an anime like what you're describing, just be more indirect. You know what I mean? Like, don't explain it that clearly. Leave things unexplained.
Actually on that front.
You know?
I have two small
Sure.
things actually. First off, I obviously love Ghibli. I think that my favorite movie of his is probably The Wind Rises. The saddest one, of course. But one of the things that I really appreciate about it is that it strikes a really nice balance between sort of having this really accurate, really amazing depiction of like childlike wonder and stuff like that, but also it has a really, really solid story with like a really good ending and stuff too. And I can totally appreciate that the other movies are mostly about capturing the childlike spirit, so there are things that don't really make sense or aren't explained, but that you can kind of like accept them. But that's why I think that The Wind Rises stands apart so much, you know. And that, to be fair, that was when he said he was going to retire before he promptly decided not to retire. So he was probably trying to end it with something very definitive. But yeah, that is a really interesting point about Eastern versus Western stuff.
And I find that people who don't like anime tend to get turned off towards that element of anime. Like, that's a complaint I hear a lot about the Ghost in the Shell movie, the original one.
Oh no.
Which is also
God, I need to watch
very,
Ghost in the
very
Shell.
cerebral,
I
the
love
original.
Cyberpunk.
I love that movie so
I
much.
love that movie, but it's also like very weird, and it like doesn't. You have to listen very carefully to what's like what the characters are saying, because it doesn't repeat itself very often, and there's a lot of very quiet moments in it.
The second thing, by the way, is that if you like anime that kind of builds up things kind of like Rebellion, but has a sort of a more clear vision and like is better at kind of giving you the hints and stuff in like a way where you can just watch it once and kind of get it, you should really watch The Promised Neverland. It is fantastic.
You know, I hear that a lot. I probably should watch it, because I keep hearing that over and over again.
Yeah, I've definitely
The manga
heard
is
it.
so good too.
Yeah.
The manga is the type of thing where the author hides Easter eggs and lore in every single bit of it, including the covers, inner covers, the backs, and the omake. The omake have lore.
Nice.
It's really great. I love it so much.
Maybe that's
Anyway,
like,
that's just a small side thing.
coming back to the whole like discussion of lore and when you tear down lore, when you don't. That's, as far as I can tell, that's basically what the Rebellion movie is. And that's why, like, I think people dislike the first half of it so much when they tend to like the second half, is because it's establishing a lore and then tearing it down. But to most of the viewers, you didn't need to establish the lore, because you pick up right away what's wrong with it as a viewer. Whether you liked the Rebellion movie or not seems to kind of hinge on whether you were willing to sit out that establishing a new lore for them to tear down, versus why didn't they just use the lore that already had existed at the end of the series or whatever. I didn't mind that. I kind of was enjoying being presented with this universe and here's the holes in it. Can you sense where a hole is here and there? And, you know, they use the script and all of these little visual cues to tell you something's wrong. But yeah, I don't really felt like I needed to understand the script or anything, like the witch script or anything like that. I think it did do a really good job making an atmospherically gleeful space and then immediately making you uncomfortable with it, just because you know it's wrong from everything previous leading up to this. You know it's not the world that they built up to. But it's kind of, to me, I enjoyed just sitting through the journey of them poking holes in it and finding what's wrong with it and things like that, even though it was a given right from the beginning that something was wrong.
I think I said this at the end. If I had to, I could just lose the first half of the movie, because the second half is where the important stuff happens. But that doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like, I do like sitting there and watching those visuals and looking at all of these little cracks in this.
Yeah, like it's fun to hunt. It's kind of like watching The Usual Suspects again.
Yeah.
Is once you know everything that kind of transpires after, you start looking for all of the little holes that they left behind and all of the little, this window changed how it looked and et cetera, and it does deliver in that sense. And in that sense, I find a lot of the time I don't have a lot of replayability with anime movies, especially, and it made it an exception in this sense, in the same way that I found End of Evangelion had a lot of rewatch value, because it does a similar thing where it sets up these circumstances and then tears them down in the second half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I kind of enjoy, like, going back and
do a whole episode.
Yeah. I like going back and finding all of the, like, little asides and clues that they left behind and contexts. And a lot of the time you don't need, like, all of that. You don't need, like, a dictionary and the encyclopedia to find them. A lot of the time it's just a question of, like, framing or tone of voice or things like that. So
all right.
And I have two more small things
Go.
to say about Rebellion before we get into the letters. I just want to get these out of the way real quick. You gotta snap these out of the way, okay? Well, there's two other big things, but one of the other big things that I like about Rebellion is the details, and not just the stuff where if you can rewatch it repeatedly and you can find out that there's runes that tell you the entire plot line and stuff like that. But I also love that they build up a lot of small pieces of imagery and kind of bring them back around. Like in the mommy fight, you can hear the moment that she replaces herself with the dummy. It's just hard to spot.
I did not catch that.
Yeah. And there's some stuff like, obviously the window is a bit more heavy-handed, but that reappears a number of times. There's the fact that Hamura tracing her hands over Madoka's legs exactly mirrors Hamalily's hands dragging her back from the guillotine.
yeah.
That's pretty neat, I think.
Mirrored imagery like
there's
that
a lot of
great.
little things like that where they build up these tiny bits of imagery and then they kind of wrap back around. I like the gramophone exploding, especially because the gramophone on Hamalily represents how she's a broken record repeating the same mistakes over and over. And then at the end, instead of just shutting it off, it just blows up, which is kind of a great allegory for the new universe she's built.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's also, you mentioned this actually, she asks Madoka the same questions in at the end of the movie, but I like the way that they've reframed it, where in the original, she's trying to prevent her from becoming a magical girl and she's trying to protect her. So she's like, you care about your family, you care about the world you live in, you shouldn't change yourself. Now it's more sinister where she's like, well, you care about everyone, don't you? You wouldn't want to become a god and never see them again, right? Yeah. It's as if she's trying to, like, validate her own actions because she regrets them, which I think is really interesting in terms of her character.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's one thing that really stuck with me.
She is not happy, like, even remotely. They even show her with the shoes at the edge of the building, meaning that she threw herself off and stuff like that. She's not a happy camper at all. And that's, I think, the other big thing is that the movie resonates with me a lot because I have some, like, depression issues. Like, I can really feel kind of like what Hamura's going through in a way. And that's part of what made it so emotional, is I was like, oh god, I get this so hard.
God, some of those parts.
Yeah. Evangelion's like that too. Like that, there's the same kind of connection.
Oh,
with that.
yeah. Evangelion goes so hard. Ano has, like, depression big time. He really resonates with that. And I think we obviously know about Jen and how he's a very angry person and a very sort of sad person, and how he has also inserted directly some of this stuff, like in the show when he has that those guys on the train that Sayaka may or may not have killed.
Definitely killed.
Based on an
totally
actual...
killed.
He sat through.
Yeah, he's definitely had that conversation.
At least gave them a big talk to. She probably killed him though at that point. She's witched out enough
Definitely
at that point to do it.
It is the position of this podcast that Sayaka definitely killed those guys.
Yeah.
She killed like 2 people.
Not even a witch yet.
Sayaka is a murderer.
Yeah.
I love the alternate timeline where she doesn't become a witch and they have to, like, put her in prison for murder.
Murdering those guys.
Nice.
There's also an alternate timeline one of my friends proposed, which is when the gramophone explodes. That's the gramophone that's been playing the soundtrack this whole time.
Oh no. No.
Fix
And
it.
they were like, who do you think makes the soundtrack in universe? And I was like, this was what Kyosuke has been training for this whole time. This is what his violin training is for.
Take over.
But yeah, for me, it's all about like how wild the visuals were, how all the details come together and everything, and also like how it's so obviously about depression. Like I can't ignore it. You know, and I can totally accept that it has a lot of flaws. Like the movie appeals to me because I have strange taste. I like the movies no one else likes to an extent. But yeah, I think it has its merits, you know.
Absolutely. The emotional texture of the movie is something that stuck with me long after watching it, and some of the things that happen in that movie are just like, I get it. I understand why she would do this. Like, you know, that bone deep kind of like, oh fuck. I feel it.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I will say this. I compared Rebellion to the most recent Star Wars movie in one of the Rebellion episodes, and we got a couple comments saying like, "Oh no, you didn't." That Star Wars movie was real bad, and it's been a couple months since it came out, and I will say this: I no longer give a shit about Star Wars because that movie was so terrible. I do still care about Madoka Magica, like as much as many issues as I have with Rebellion. It has not made me stop caring about what's going to happen next. So I still feel invested. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like there's bad movies that like make you like just say, well, that was shit, and then you never think about it ever again. Rebellion has been stuck in my brain since I watched it, so it's like like clearly it does mean something to me for it to be in my rattling around in my head for so long. You know what I'm saying? And there are things about it that I do love. So like I think talking about it on the podcast has been really good because it did help me like appreciate some of the stuff about it that I had not really thought about.
I remember the comparison I was going to make.
Oh, sure.
By the way.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah. So in terms of the rebuild films, I've already mentioned my favorite Eva film was 3.0, which is the one where it goes off the rails. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting about the movie is that it's sort of a logical progression, but by doing so, it completely flips everything around.
Right.
You know, Shinji, he tries to follow everybody's directions. He ends up getting burned by it. He's trying to find some kind of redemption, and in the process, they kind of lead him into a trap and cause him to destroy even more. I know that there's been some debate about whether or not Rebellion is actually like a logical progression of the character arcs and the plot line. I personally think it makes a bit more sense than other people. I mean, especially when Hamura literally told Kyubey everything about witches and basically put the idea in his head in the first place, which must really make him sad.
That would be a logical progression of Kyubey. I think I think the main objection is whether it's a logical progression of the Homura we saw in the anime. I think that's the main problem that most people have. I can totally agree with you as far as Kyubey's bullshit. Kyubey is a bad person.
But
Kyubey's bad.
Amanda, you and I will forever be at odds on this.
Kyubey.
I do think it's a logical progression for Homura.
Well, I know. And we've talked about that already. Yeah. Like that, but I'm saying that is the sticking point for people.
Yeah.
That's what people disagree on.
Definitely.
You know?
And I will be completely fair. She is turning into a witch. Her own feelings about herself are probably getting distorted just because of the fact that she is a literal embodiment of despair. Like, I will be completely fair. Everything that she does, especially at the end of the movie, is probably very well influenced by the fact that she turned into a cosmic abomination for like
that's
a minute.
Really the only way I can make sense of it. Like when that little salamander like gets squished and disappears.
Yeah, I mean,
I think of that as
really
the last remnants of her humanity disappearing, and now she's like an inherently different person. Like that's kind of how I like to think about it.
Well, I mean, in that sense, you've also got the whole just like despair changes you, etc.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I can kind of squint my eyes and see what you guys are saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes sense at least for where the plot would go in terms of character stuff. Definitely, it's kind of hard to tell perfectly exactly how she would have changed. I haven't read Wraith arc, but she seemed like she was okay at the end of the original series. Not like perfectly happy, but she seemed like she could find her own like direction and reason to live. You know, but definitely as of Rebellion, she has been horrifically traumatized. And I don't think that she's going to be happy until Madoka 4 eventually comes out or something like that. And we can finally figure out what the heck's going to happen. But yeah, the point is I think I like stuff where they build up these themes and then by sort of following it to its logical conclusion, it leads to everything completely flipping around.
Yeah.
Right. Because that's basically what Rebuild is.
Yeah. Rebuild, oh yeah, I mean, it is a sequel too, so that's kind of weird.
All right, so.
Okay, so let's get to some of what our listeners had to say about Rebellion. We had numerous people get back to us on this. I will summarize some of what we got back, because some of the comments were a bit similar. I don't want to say, like, and there's nothing wrong with it, with that being similar. There were, like, some patterns in what people were saying about why they liked Rebellion. Here's one from patron Sailor Cosmo. They had this to say: as far as Rebellion goes, I have always enjoyed it because I feel like it's a beautiful source of supplementary material for one of my favorite shows. It veered off so much from the original anime, I have always viewed it as an alternate ending rather than a continuation of the series. I understand when listening to this podcast, I understand why some fans of the series don't care for Rebellion, and that's valid. I think my feelings on Rebellion are best summed up by the character Nagisa. I think she was underused and basically unnecessary, but it's also one of my favorite things about the movie. So this was, I just wanted to mention this to start off with, because this was a common thing that people mentioned. A lot of people said, I understand what you're saying, but I still just really like it.
It's just fun. We didn't need it, but it was fun.
Totally fair.
That is interesting. An alternate ending is a really interesting way to view it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I kind of caught on that myself.
Yeah. I would prefer to think of it as an alternate ending too, but
I think a lot of fans
would.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not everyone will let you think of it as an alternate ending, because there's some rude people out there, but, you know.
I think it depends on where you want it to, like, how many series can you do this with, where you're like, well, I don't think I liked the last episode. Well, I don't know, I guess that doesn't count. This is an extra movie.
Yeah.
That's fair.
With Utano, we've had to compartmentalize so much. Like, tightly compartmentalized.
That's fair,
things.
yeah.
The movie is its own thing. The series is its own thing.
The manga
is its own thing. The musicals are their own thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it's a little easier for us to kind of see Rebellion as like,
its
own thing, and that's a possibility.
Yeah.
I saw a post at one point. I can't remember the name they coined for it, but it was like the something canon, where it's just like the parts that are canon except the parts that I don't like.
Oh god, I need to know that word, because
like, I need to find
that word.
I thought it was like Schrodinger's
I'll
canon.
use
but
that
I
word every day of my life.
Yeah.
All right.
Let me see
So
if I can
because
find
I said
it.
so
You can
canon.
read it, the next one.
That's a good canon.
Oh, yep, it is Schrodinger's
Yep.
canon.
Oh, really?
Okay. Schrodinger's
Yeah.
canon. Let's use that. Schrodinger's canon. I like that.
All right. I like that.
All right.
So
So
Patron Lee had this to say.
Mm-hmm.
So they started off, agreeing with, like Sailor Cosmo, what I had said earlier, agreeing that, I understand your criticisms of Rebellion, but it's still one of my favorite movies because I'm more interested in Homura as a character than anything else about the Madoka premise. After spending the whole series wanting to know what was going on in Homura's head, I appreciated getting an entire movie dedicated to breaking her down. Everything about her fascinates me, and I find it satisfying to see her get her literal wish in the end, even to the detriment of the story's pacing and message. So, I thought that was a pretty interesting thing to bring up.
That is interesting.
Yeah, that's very how I feel about it.
Yeah.
I've seen theories that Homura has, like, secretly always been the main character. I don't know if I fully agree. She's definitely like a primary character in the original.
What?
Definitely the main character in this one.
Yeah, I think so.
She's like the hidden main character.
Yeah.
In the
she's sort of like Alucard and Helsing. Like the real main character is Cerys, but Alucard's like doing his own thing, and he's like super important.
I was actually gonna say kind of like Aragorn in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the main character, but it's kind
of the main character, but kind of not.
Where the major action hinges.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily the main point of view, though.
I
like that too, though. Like I liked Rebellion as an exploration of what Homer wanted to the detriment of the plot and pacing.
Yeah,
because it is like it's like that's not the ending anyone wanted, except Homer.
Yeah, she literally gets her.
That is true. Yeah.
Who didn't
Once
give
again,
a shit about
compared to
plot and
Evangelion,
pacing.
it's very much just sort of a character study.
And I mean, like, you're yes, but also no. It's like kind of how I would look at it, because you guys are right. Like, I will concede you're right. Yes. But also no, in my opinion, because I really like the ending of the original anime.
It is a good ending.
You're right.
Like the final 2 episodes?
Yeah. You're right. Like, yes, but also no, because I really like that ending. So
I like that one.
Yeah.
Too. I like them both.
So,
it can be both.
Yeah, it can be both. So I can kind of like, I don't know. Like I've mentioned before, I really admire Homer as a positive, likable character, like a heroic kind of character.
Yeah.
So a movie breaking her down as like breaking down her psychology in a more like nuanced and negative way is yes, good. You're right, fascinating, but also no. Like to me, in my perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once again, with theories, I've seen people try to act like she's always been like the villain, and that they're just like reframing the context. Where it's like in the original show's context, she's a hero because she's trying to virtuously and endlessly protect Madoka. But then when you put it in a different context, it's like, oh, this is actually bad. And I used to kind of agree with that more, but I don't really agree with it now. I think it's mostly because she's like a witch now, and she's horrifically
and I do think that is more justifiable in a post-Rebellion state of the franchise. Like, if Rebellion never existed, I think that would be a much more difficult thing to argue.
Amanda, I think Lee says something interesting at the end of her
yes. Yes. I think that's also part of what I was somewhat
we were kind of addressing it.
Yeah, would you like to read it? Go for it.
Sure. It says that the consequences of Homura getting her wish granted are so tragic makes it all the more compelling to me. By fixating so hard on her perfect version of their relationship that could have been, she ends up destroying everything about herself that sparked the connection between them in the first place. It's harsh, but it feels more believable to me than expecting her to just get over such extreme trauma with no one who could understand or support her. I mean, like, can you, like, insert just a 100 there?
Yeah.
You know, that's...
Yeah, so that's another thing where I'm like, yes, but also no.
Yeah, fair. No, I think if I'm going to make a broad assumption that if Homer's arc interested you specifically for the depiction of depression and codependence and things like that, then the Rebellion movie probably jived just fine with you. If that wasn't the arc that you were showing up for in the first place, it might not be as satisfying because you wanted her to have a better resolution.
But just on a personal note, I think it is kind of important to tell stories about people who are heroes and how they can become villains using their same logic that they became heroes with. Like, because, I mean, on a personal note, I've been in situations where I've come very close to being a very bad person.
Right.
Using the same morals that guided me to being a good person.
Yeah.
So it's not always as clear cut as do the right thing and you will be a good person.
Yeah.
And especially like when it's pointed out, like, Homura does not have anyone who understands or supports her through this.
Yeah.
Like, she's got, like, but, because Madokami is not really the best emotional support friend.
No.
She saves her and everything, but that's not really what she's for. And I mean, in that sense, someone dealing with such an insane emotional weight with no no one to help her contextualize it or anything, you kind of don't get surprised when it goes way off the rails.
Yeah.
Okay, I know this is supposed to be a Go Rebellion podcast, but I feel like I have to respond to this.
But
Okay, number one. Magical girl stories are idealistic and they're positive and they're uplifting, okay? So me as a magical girl fan, I look at this as, yes, Madokami is enough as support for her, because that's the whole idea. Madokami does see her and does understand and support her, because that's the whole point of the ending, and that's the whole point of her smiling at the end and hearing her voice. So if you want to take a hard, realistic reading of this ending, which is what Rebellion does, and what you guys are doing, which is fine. Absolutely fine. Like, I'm just trying to explain my side of it, right? But if you're looking at this from the perspective of a magical girl fan, it's not a situation where she has no one to understand or support her. And she doesn't, it's unrealistic for her to get over it. Because this is magical girl stories, and Gen's writing one. Like, I've always seen the original anime.
It's not following the conventions.
Yeah, like, it's interesting that you brought up how if you feel like you can relate to the depression and trauma part of Homura's story, then you might enjoy Rebellion more. Because I feel like I can relate more to what I just described about how Homura did all of this for Madoka, and then finally Madoka saw it and understood. Like, I really appreciate that part of her arc, and I really appreciate the fact that Homura kept doing the right thing even when nobody was appreciating what she was doing. You know, and that is what I really took. That is what probably my favorite part of the her original anime story is.
Right.
So that's kind of more what I took away from it and what I loved the most about it. So I think you're right about that. I think you're right that if you're someone who can really relate to the depression and trauma side of it, you're probably somebody who finds Rebellion a lot more fascinating, and you probably get more out of it, you know? And if you're somebody like me who loves the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Sailor Moon, then you might find Rebellion a lot more of a downer. Yeah.
That's actually, that's interesting. That makes me think of a theory that I have about Madoka and sort of what it's standing for. There's a lot of things that it's trying to get at, obviously, but in regards to the depression thing, I thought it was really interesting that effectively how I interpret it is, if you try to live your life being 100% happy and expecting that all the time, then you're going to crash harder, which is being a magical girl and turning into a witch. But then when Madokami is introduced to it, by getting support, you can turn despair into a weapon by literally using your witch form as a weapon, such as Octavia having a massive fight with Hamalili, which looked awesome. But, that's kind of how I take it, and it's something where I sort of wonder if the movie ending would have been better if she had just let Madokami take her. I think I've seen some people that think that if she had taken Hamura, that, like, the incubators would have been able to get her or something. I'm not sure how true it is. Like logically speaking, what she did might have been the best for at least holding the incubators off for a bit. But, that is sort of how I interpret some of the depression stuff, is that I think that it's all a big metaphor for what it's like to be depressed and how to recover from it, or like how to sort of get better. They're able to, by getting supported and understood by Madokami, return being able to use despair not as something that brings them down, but as something that can like motivate them to be stronger.
Yeah, that is a great way to see it.
Also, I just remembered a detail that I should have talked about earlier, but I would be remiss not to mention. Did you notice obviously you probably noticed the like familiars from Gertrude?
Yes.
the ones that come back and help Octavia out in the big battle against Honolulu. But pretty much every witch from the original series is there. You can see just the legs with the skirts from that witch. You can see several of the Gertrude familiars, and you can also see the sketchy ones from the Crayon Witch. And what I think is so cool about that especially is that in that very first bit when they're chasing the nightmare down and the nightmare goes into like that endless line of doors and ends up in that room, you can see all the witch labyrinths in it. Which I thought was really, I don't know if it adds too much, I think it's really interesting. Alright, anyway, I just felt like I would be remiss not to mention what I thought was kind of like a neat little detail. We should probably get back to listener stuff.
No, and we appreciate it, definitely.
This is a comment from YouTube user Pixie Wanna Dixie. Love the name. I just like, they said, I'm kind of that chaotic neutral that liked every bit of Rebellion and saw it as a movie I'll rewatch every year due to its beauty and my love of the movie. I just
You are valid.
I liked the pointed that out because I just like the fact that they called themselves a chaotic neutral.
Yeah, that feels very like, yeah, that's definitely.
I was reading ahead a little bit, and I like what YouTube user Igavans?
Yes, would you like to read it for us?
Probably.
Sure.
All right.
Strange as it may sound, I think the pointlessness of Rebellion is one of its strengths. In concept, the worst thing about a Madoka sequel movie is that the series had a perfect ending and did not need a continuation. Therefore, I actually appreciate the fact that the things that happen in Rebellion don't really matter all that much, and that the film's entire existence is just a giant piece of fan service. Viewing the film as a post-credit fever dream to the series gives me the framework I personally need to enjoy it.
Yeah, Egavans actually left multiple comments, and I thought this was one of the better, like probably the best ones that kind of summed up what they were trying to get at. Yeah, I mean, that's a totally valid way of looking at it
valid.
Too. Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay.
You can just roll with it if it's low stakes as far as your understanding of the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is a comment from YouTube user Zrasaba. It starts off feeling like a negative comment, but this is why they enjoyed the movie. So they're explaining why they liked the movie. So, I remember feeling uneasy from the beginning of the movie. The transformation and Cake Game both went on so long that it became uncomfortable. Combining the genuinely sweet moments with the surreal art style and animation, and then adding the uncomfortable fan service moments made the whole thing feel off. So Homer realizing something was wrong was a relief. Both because of the dramatic irony of the audience knowing this wasn't a world from the series, while the characters acted like nothing was wrong, and because the less palatable fan service, for me anyway, was no longer front and center. It was still around, but I could focus on what was happening instead. Granted, I might have gone in with some spoilers, but I don't remember for sure. I at least knew the end was controversial. Obviously, I would be going in with a different mindset than someone who had been anticipating it and watched it right when it was released.
You know what? That actually kind of introduces an interesting, like the idea of the whole framing of the first half and everything being off, and that makes Homura the audience avatar.
Yeah.
Because the audience and Homura both are watching this idyllic little magical girl world and seeing all the chips and cracks in it and things like that.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
So it's setting you up to kind of view things from Homura's point of view.
Right.
Yeah. Additionally, I think it's interesting that they talk about how maybe part of their mindset on it is based on the fact that they watched it like knowing that something was going to be weird about it, which is sort of how I got introduced to Madoka. I literally said, someone told me, hey, this is like Evangelion, but it has magical girls in it. So like I knew something was going to be weird. Yeah. And in a way, you know, you may have noticed kind of the way I talk about Rebellion is that I'm like, oh, I like the fact that it's building off of some of this stuff. Kind of like what they're talking about with how it was weird and kind of uncomfortable, but that kind of helped build up the atmosphere for it.
Yeah.
For me, I was like, I know something's weird. I'm intentionally looking for it. And that kind of strengthens it because of my unique experience and how I found out about it.
Yeah, I mean, that is... I like this comment a lot because... This is a good comment because it does a great job conveying how this person had a different experience from how I had. And this is probably accurate for a lot of people. So thank you for this comment, Sarasava. Yeah. Okay, so we got an email from Crystal the Cool. They mentioned some things that we've kind of already mentioned, but they had this to say. Rebellion is one of my favorite movies of all time. One of my favorite things about it is how the environment directly relates to Homura's mental state throughout the film.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it makes for great rewatch material. It really helps you get invested in her arc. I really like the soundtrack.
Yes!
It's got this vibe that meshes perfectly with visuals. Honestly, I think everything in Rebellion complements and builds upon itself. Also, I really, really, really love Homura. So this kind of like goes back to some of the stuff we've been talking about, like people who are invested in Homer as a character, the visuals, the rewatch material. Like this kind of encapsulates, like this is like kind of a nice summary as we're getting towards the end here. Like this kind of encapsulates all the stuff that we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it just boiling down to a difference in what you wanted from Homura's arc.
Yeah,
and what you related
exactly.
to about her.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. And maybe here's our last email here. Would one of you guys like to read these?
All right. So for the last one that we're going to cover today, Morgan also emailed us. They get into that they agree with Amanda. The show's ending was largely happy with Homura at peace. Rebellion's ending is sad and I hate it. Yet I still love Rebellion and find it compatible with the show's happy ending. They go into here how a few of the things that we talked about how depression can affect you, despair can change you. And they go, so it's not that Homura never healed, only that she was vulnerable to being hurt again. Damn you, Cubit. Which is my point of view. I mean,
yeah. That's actually a good point. That's a good point to make.
Yeah.
Damn you, Cube is something we can
that absolutely. But that she was vulnerable to being hurt again is a good point to make.
Yeah.
Too. Like, just because she had found some kind of contentment at the end of the series doesn't mean it was everlasting. It doesn't mean it was invulnerable. And then they go on, for me, Rebellion actually makes the show's bittersweet ending happier by resolving two uncomfortable issues. One, it shows that Madoka and the vanished magical girls truly live on in heaven, not just as some vague collective consciousness, but as a reunion of real people who retain their memories and feelings. And oh my god, yes. Yeah. I was so happy to learn that.
That is true.
Yeah, because having them just disappear or having them just be like, part of the atmosphere, collective consciousness, like Morgan says.
Yeah.
That doesn't, they're not individuals anymore. And so seeing that they are individuals.
It's magical girl instrumentality.
I
went with magical girl instrumentality.
No, it's not. We learned that it's not.
Yeah.
We learned that it's not, and that they are still real people with their own memories, their own feelings, and I was happy about that too.
I especially like that. I had a conversation with one of my friends who is sort of she's more like anti-rebellion than I am. We can agree on it mostly though. And one of the points that she made about why Homura did something like good at the end of the film was she said that Madoka regretted leaving her family in order to become a god and did it out of like necessity rather than something that she wanted. And I was like, the proof of her success is like chilling with her in heaven. Like she's friends with all these magical girls, and she even like sends them back down to help Homura out. Like, even if she does miss her family, which she almost certainly does, I mean, the proof of what she's doing is helping people is like with her right now.
Right.
I really like that.
The second point that Morgan makes is Rebellion's ending finally creates the potential for Madoka and Homura to relate on the same level. They've always leapfrogged one another with vast differences in power, knowledge, and competence. Their only moment of equality was when Homura used Madoka's name and then killed her. After that, Homura was on a far higher level until Madoka surpassed her again to become a god. And so, yeah, I kind of get that. Like, now there isn't a power differential between the two of them. And that's important. Like, if you were to look at this as something that has a part 4 coming, then I think the part 4 would probably be addressing how that changes their relationship. Now that they're on the same level, now that they have kind of the same means and powers, and now that it's not one of them being excessively over the other, that's going to change how they relate, and I think in a good way.
Yeah.
Because once you remove that power differential, you have a lot more potential for, meeting on equal ground. Right? Being able to just talk to each other without having to address the fact that you're a god and the other one is not.
Or that I'm going to die to protect you.
Yeah.
Come hell or high water, etc., etc.
So
like,
it puts them on more equal ground, and I like that too.
mm-hmm.
I would say I also like that. I do find that more interesting. However, Morgan, I do have to disagree with you. I don't think that makes the anime's ending happier. Necessarily.
Yeah.
I do just think that means it's an interesting point about the ending of Rebellion. I can't agree with you about that making the anime's ending happier.
Makes it happier for me.
Well, sure, yes.
Yeah.
That's a matter of
personal taste. Yeah.
Okay.
It's true.
So we're getting pretty close to the line here, so we should wrap up.
Yeah, maybe everyone in a few words, everyone say their favorite thing about Rebellion just to close us off. In no particular order, really.
Well, Lily, you want to start off?
I like the potential for like a fourth movie.
Yes.
That's sort of I've mentioned it before. I like movies that kind of have like potential.
Yes.
You know. So when I see this, I'm like, hey, Madoka 4 is going to be awesome.
That's a good answer.
Just because nobody else is going to say it, I liked the bus sequence when they're trying to get out of that.
Oh yeah, that was so good.
That was like like porn for you.
I liked the bus tesseract situation they kept going.
The one where it catches on fire, or the one before?
All of it. Just them attempting to leave the place and having the place just not. Agree
the 15-minute bus scene.
Yeah.
That weird tower of windows.
I just loved all of it. I just loved how fuck you it was.
Oh, you just reminded me of one of the funniest things in the movie to me, which is when it says "stop requested" and then the bus falls and explodes.
Yes, it's like I love everything about that because it's just so like the world it's hostile architecture, but in a witch labyrinth where all the architecture is hostile.
Yep. Amanda, maybe I should go last.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I love the last 45 minutes. Everything about it.
Great.
Oh, absolutely.
Everything about it. Everything about the last 45 minutes. I have no complaints about the last 45 minutes of the movie, other than the last 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
Wait, the last, the 35 minutes that are sandwiched in between the last 10 minutes and the rest of it.
Yeah.
I love Rebellion, and I can agree. I agree with that. That was the best part.
And you are valid.
Best section.
Absolutely. All right. And for me, my favorite thing about Rebellion is the development of Homura's character. Like, I get a lot personally out of it because it mirrors situations that I've been in real life. And it... Again, like I mentioned this earlier, but I think it is a powerful thing and an important thing to tell stories that acknowledge that your morals can lead you wrong.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Even if it ruins my hero waifu, I can still agree with the basic statement that it's important to have stories that show that following your morals can lead you down the wrong path. I can agree with that singular statement. I just didn't want it to ruin. I just didn't want it to ruin my life.
Hard, Amanda, and I
appreciate this. This is a leap of progress.
So your favorite's Homura, then. Who's everyone's favorite?
Oh, yeah, we never asked you that.
Yeah, mine is Bonnie.
Yeah,
yes, mine is definitely Homura.
I think it's Homura all around here.
Yeah, Rebellion Homura hot take.
Really. That is interesting because they are kind of mirrors to each other, like both superficially and also kind of like their deeper characters. They have a lot of
Mami and Homura?
similarities.
Yeah.
They bounce off each other in a really interesting way. That's kind of why I like the fight as well. It's like you kind of see how their personalities clash.
Yeah.
Almost.
As someone that relates deeply to Homura, I hate Mami.
Aww.
That's totally that bitch. Homura definitely thinks of Mami as that bitch.
But I think it probably doesn't really count properly, but Madoka also, like specifically Madoka, I really, really like her. I have a thing. I have like I definitely have like some issues though. Like you can, if you look at all my favorite characters, every single one of them is like a really good like motherly figure.
Aww.
I got a bit of a problem, I think.
I always love the the tragic hero that nobody appreciates, just to continue on what I was mentioning before. So it should not be a surprise to you, Lily, that Kaoru is my favorite character from Eva for that exact same reason.
Kaoru is a higher being that's just so gay. He's just transcending time and space.
The underappreciated character who is super devoted and no one realizes it. Anyway, let's wrap up. Thank you for listening. If you would like to follow the podcast on social media, we are at madokamagicast on Twitter and Tumblr. You could email us at madokamagicast@gmail.com. If you would like to follow me, host Amanda, on Twitter, you can do so at Lambda Power, LAMBDA Power, or I guess if you want to look at my artwork, hi Sam.
Hi, Sam.
I am at Odd Lasdo on Twitter.
And if you should want to find me and Vanna, we are always at ohtori.nu. You can see pretty much all the last of her 20 years there. Yeah, Rib is right. And if you want to see our Twitter shitposts, we are at ohtori_nu. Lily, where can people find you?
Before I plug myself, can you make sure to show me your cat?
Yes.
I'm sure your cat's somewhere. But I'm on Tumblr at madokamagicasecrets. That's pretty much the only thing that I use. I tried to expand and I just didn't really do it.
You should come and
you can still find me
you
on
should
there.
come join our shit posting on Twitter.
I made a Madoka Secrets Twitter at one point, but then I just never used it.
You should start using it. It's
maybe
more lively, I think.
Everyone pretty much moved
Tumblr.
over to Twitter after the Tumblr apocalypse.
Yeah.
Yeah, just move over to Twitter, let us know it's you, and then we'll just start talking to you. So you don't even that we'll be your in onto Twitter. Yeah.
All right.
So yeah, thank you for listening, and I guess we'll see y'all on the next episode, which might be Different Story Part 1.
Yes, I'm excited.
Exciting. Yeah. All right. Thank you. Bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.